Turn the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for spending some time with me today. We are going to once again visit our 2.5 inch square piles, stacks, stashes, whatever. And then we will be exploring some things beyond that, but we're going to start with the 2.5 inch squares because I know a lot of people, myself included, have a lot of 2.5 inch squares. So we're going to start with that. And the basic premise is this. This was a postcard that I made as part of an experiment to make postcards and see how they would survive in the mail. So I made several and mailed them different ways. And anyway, so if you recall, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you have probably seen my 1.5 inch finished, well, my 9-patch project using 1.5 inch squares that I've been cutting for decades. And I think I was getting discouraged in getting them all together at one point. Or I guess I had some modern 1.5 inch squares, some solid colors, which sort of works with what I'm doing, but not in great numbers probably. So I took some 9 patches that I had made, sewed them together into a larger piece, and then cut it to postcard size, and then overlaid it and did this black and white print off to one side, sort of a wavy effect. And I also did this on another postcard, and it had the same fabric but a different sort of wavy effect. So this is where I want to start. It's a pretty simple concept, of course, and then we may look at some different variations of it. So we're using 2.5 inch squares today to start out, which of course it's going to be larger than this, but this was to accommodate the US postcard specifications. So let's get started. I have some of my 2.5 inch stash squares here, and you can of course use prints. You can use any kind of prints. Doesn't have to be solid prints. Doesn't have to be solids. It doesn't have to be bright prints. It could be Civil War or plaids or whatever. This is just my style. So I'm going to start out and make some 9 patches here. Probably not going to need very many. And from my stash, for some of them, I have plenty of one particular fabric. Pardon the scraggles here. I have lots of shot cotton and it ravels a lot, and frankly everything gets tossed around a lot when I'm doing these videos. I'm sure you will have a much neater and ordered 2.5 inch squares. Anyway, they do not have to be the exact same fabric though. So for example, here on the greens, I have different greens, but they're still lime green, and they would be fine to use in a scrappy 9 patch. Here I have some pinks, which sort of are and sort of aren't remotely the same, but they're all pinks, so that's a possibility. This one's kind of a light pink for the day, and here's some purples and some blues that are different. So you will see some that are not necessarily 5 or 4 of the exact same fabric or color. So it's just simple 9 patches, which, in case there is anyone who is really beginner and has not done 9 patches before, you need 4 of one color or fabric or like color and 5 of another, and they're just alternating. So just lay them out. I am going to be pressing seams open today just because I don't know how things are going to go together, and it's just easier to press them open at this point when I don't know how they're going. All right, the way I usually do it is to pick up these 2 right sides together, which in my case doesn't really matter. Put it through the machine, don't break the thread, pick up the next ones, run those through so that they're still attached to that, and then do the same with the 3rd pair down here. then I can cut the thread, and then I come back. These are all attached to each other now, and now I can do this right sides together through the machine. Then I can come back and sew the rows together. If you are more comfortable just sewing them together one by one, that works too, whatever. All right, so I'm just going to make, I don't know, maybe 4 9 patches out of these squares, and then I'll be back. I have 4 9 patches, and I'm just going to sew them into a big 4 patch, a 9 patch 4 patch. Simple enough, no big deal. I will do that and come back. Then we're going to be cutting them into pieces, and we'll think and talk about how we want to do that. Why, you may ask, did we sew these together if we're just going to cut them apart? And of course I wouldn't have needed to. I could have continued with what I'm going to do with just 2 of these, or 1 of these, or however many. But if you'll notice here, I have bits and pieces of other 9 patches in there. So I'm thinking that I want to do these into thirds. So I am going to do that, and they're going to be pretty narrow. Think about this, and they don't have to be exact. It's just that I can trim them, of course, but I think for the moment, wait a minute, that finishes at 2, so here we go. I had to catch myself on my math. And there's 1 strip, and then 2nd strip. I'm just lining up the 1-inch line on the ruler against a seam. Since we started out with 2.5-inch squares, and with the seams they're now 2 inches, so down the middle will be. So I have 3 different sizes, which does not bother me in the least. It wasn't thirds, but that is of no consequence to me. My head is full of stuff today. I apologize. I will try not to hack in your ears. Clearly that was not thirds. Doesn't matter. I'm happy with that because I've got little bits of others next to it, and I'm all right with that. If I had done thirds, I think I would have had just very little bits probably getting eaten up in a seam. This way I will have some little narrows at the edges, and they won't disappear in the seam. Now this one, I think I'm going to start with this one. And I want to do this overlay on it. So I will pull out a black and white print, and I am going to make the black and white print the same size as this. Let me think about that. Yes, no, yes. And you will see why in a minute. I will fast forward, edit out this next part where I'm thinking about that again. I think it'll be all right. I'm going to begin with this piece, I think, and I will need a black and white print for this, and I'm going to use this large polka dot just because I like it so much. And I'm going to cut it the same size as this piece, which seems counterintuitive, I'll grant you, but I'll show you why in just a moment. So I'm going to press that, cut this the same size, and we'll do the next step. I'm going to stack these two and cut a curve into it. And you will see, hopefully then, I'm going to do a positive negative kind of thing, sort of a Tony twin for those of you who are of a certain age and remember Tony products and commercials. So I can do whatever curve I want, however wide I want. I'm just going to do, for our purposes, just a pretty gentle curve like that. And that will give me two different pieces then. So this one will go with that one, and this will go with that one. These could end up perhaps next to each other. Not sure I would like that, but it's a possibility. Or be in different places in the quilt. I will sew these together. It's a pretty simple curve. I always prefer to have the convex on the top because you can ease it around better than you can if you have the concave on the top, because you have to sort of ease in this stuff as you go. It's not a huge difference, but I always prefer the concave. I may end up doing the concave on this one just because I've got some seams in there and they may stretch out and make it harder to do the curve. And we did not cut seam allowances in here, so of course it's not going to be exactly perfect in the end, and we'll have to trim, but that is perfectly workable. I will sew these curves and then we'll come back and talk about some other possible options. There's a little bit of trimming to do, but not too bad. Now, if I were doing this again, I would probably make the curve closer to one end. It would be more obvious that this was largely the black and white print and a little bit of the 9 patches. And then this one, most of the 9 patches, a little bit of the black and white. It's all right this way, and I can always cut pieces off if I decide that that's too much of the black and white, well, too close, too even. I know it isn't even, but it's more even than I don't know. My head is just rattly today, I think. So I will do a little bit of trimming, and I always have the option of making these narrower strips, which I think might be kind of a cool thing to do. I have these pretty narrow ones, and if I want a lot of contrast, then I could leave some wide and then narrow ones, or I could leave some plain that I just put in between to create a design, which would be kind of interesting. This has, and yeah, that's not a bad idea. I could live with that. And of course, we could always put a black or white strip in between here. Or, of course, a black and white stripe, because we have to bring that up. And there's a part of me that, hang on, I'm going diving. Pardon my head. That kind of wants to put a circle somewhere. You know me. Oh. Could do a black circle out in space somewhere. We could do another black and white print. That may be a little much. We could put a bright colored circle, dot, whatever. Just about anywhere. We've got lots of choices. I wonder what it would look like with some stripes in between. We're just going to explore a lot of things all at once. How's that? I am going to look for a black and white stripe and a plain black stripe. I know you'll find it hard to believe that I'm going to say this, but I think this is too much there. But here's a thought. What if we move those to one side, put this piece over here. Why I don't have those counterpoint there. And put the black and white stripe in between two plain ones. I don't like it. I do not. You might. I just think that's too much. That would be better, but it seems like too much going on. So we have these thusly. Maybe yes, maybe no. Or we could do another black and white print closer to the ends of these. I kind of like having a little something that doesn't have that black and white print in it. But I am kind of thinking, let's try cutting one of these into narrower strips. See what we think. We're just playing, remember, we're not saying this is how it needs to be. I haven't done the trimming on these either, have I? But I'm going to find my ruler and let's do it from an edge that's trimmed. I'm just going to go ahead and trim this because it needs it. Okay. And then I could make them pretty narrow strips, couldn't I? Let's go with that. What the heck? Or take one narrow strip from this, start laying these out again. And you are very possibly way ahead of me on lots of things here, with other ideas floating around in your head that you are shouting at me to no avail because I'm not hearing you. More's the pity. All right. What if we did that? This in between. I think it's still a little too much, don't you? What if I did plain black stripe up here and black, no. No. I like that better because it looks like it's been split and separated and there's just space in between. So that's a possibility. And I could cut another narrow piece from this. I'm just thinking that this is too much, this black and white dot. I like it a lot. It's pretty large for the whole scheme of things. So I might end up cutting a bit of that off, which then will make it similar to this. So I would want to cut some off of there as well. Anyway, there are those possibilities. Or so you could just play with this for a long time. And just, never decide what you want to do. Story of my life. Pardon me, you can just skip forward so you don't have to watch me bumble through. I have one going off the edge, but further down. Pink one over there. Lots of ways you can manipulate these, change them around. You could add some more. You could do a plain bright strip. What do I have in that department? Pardon the rattle. And needs a little pressing before you see it. It's coming out of my strip bag. So maybe I want, possibly not this color, but a plain strip, solid strip in between. I could just create a new stripe with different combinations of things, for sure. I've got another piece in here somewhere, don't I? Yes. A plain piece. And just end up with a kind of a chaos of stripes. A chaos of strips. Really kind of like these narrow strips, so I'm almost thinking I want to cut that and have things interspersed. This is too wide now, unless I want to do it so it goes from widest to next widest and over to the narrow side. Or I have a piece left over here, I could create another curved piece down here. I might want to do different black and white prints. Might want to do stripes. I don't know. But those are some options if you're starting out with 9 patches. They do not have to be 2.5-inch squares, of course. They don't even have to be squares that you start off with. You could make uneven 9 patches, so you have narrow and longer. So if I have something that looks like vaguely like a 9 patch here. So you could make this center section narrower, or you could make these longer and have this narrow one, and then on this one have this one longer in the middle and shorter on the outside. So you could do some kind of uneven 9 patch, which would give you some variety and be quite patchy, I guess. But today I would also like to take a look at just using strips of fabric rather than creating 9 patches. This is, an option you could use for 9 patch or 2.5-inch squares that you have. Or you could just do blocks that are whatever size 9 patches and just do this simple kind of thing, have different blocks around. It could just be part of a sampler. You could make a postcard out of it. Or, trying to think about clothing. Several of you have mentioned using the ideas in clothing, like to trim out an old jacket or sweater or whatever. And these might be kind of interesting on sleeves, or just have a strip down the front of a jacket on one side, or the front of the jacket and wrapping around the shoulder to the back. So maybe some possibilities there. And as I said, you may decide you like a different kind of fabric in here. So that's it for what I'm going to do with the 2.5-inch squares today. Let's take a look at what we might do with just strips of fabric. I misled you, but not purposely. I ended up doing some more slicing and rearranging, and I like it better with the narrower strips. The bigger pieces just seemed a little overwhelming somehow, which of course begs the question, why did we do 4 patches to begin with? Because we didn't know, because I didn't know. You may have been screaming at me, but I didn't hear it. Now, in some cases, I paid attention to matching up seams, and in some cases, I didn't. These strips were different widths because, of course, some of them had this diagonal seam, and so those widths, those lengths were different. So sometimes I worried about matching up, as I did here. Sometimes I didn't, and you can tell, of course, that, and I kind of like that effect of almost going uphill. I would do that again in a planned way. This possibly looks like I just don't know how to sew, which is okay. They're off just a little bit, but I didn't try to match them up. If I had tried, it would have worked. So I'm liking this much better than with the wider strips. It was just too, I don't know, too something that way. And I think I might, in fact, wish to have a couple of dots. Of course, I'm not going to have just 3 because I haven't got that in me. Just 2, I mean, I haven't got it in me. I will need a 3rd one. Arrange them a little differently, but I definitely am liking that better than, wow, than with the wider pieces. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Of course, I'm always happy to hear your thoughts on the subject at hand. Well, I could be here all day doing that, you know that. So slicing is, I think, kind of a fun thing to do for improv, and you know this about me if you followed the circuit quilt. Here's the circuit quilt, which started out as half square triangles, small 2.5-inch half square triangles. I'll see if I can put a little short clip at the end of kind of going through that process of making that quilt, if you don't want to watch the whole series I did on YouTube. So here's this one. Next up, I want to do something with just strips. Now I have 2.5-inch strips here, but I don't know that I really want them to be even, so I may save those for something else. But I do have, from cleaning out my scrap bin here, some more pastel strips of varying widths, and get those out of there, and configurations. Some have curves, some are straight but not straight, if you know what I mean. And I think it would be kind of fun to play with them. We're hoping for spring around here. I don't know what your weather is like there, but we could stand a little spring. We had, I don't know, about 16 hours straight of rain, which was wonderful. It was a nice steady rain, you know, absorbed into the ground, everything we and the farmers want. And then we had 8 inches of snow a couple days later, and then it warmed up. And then a couple of days later, we got ice, and I think it was like 7 degrees Fahrenheit when I went for my walk yesterday, and today it's, I don't know, almost 50. So just a little bit of consistency, which is just, there's no way that's happening in Iowa, and probably not most any place in the world. Okay. So I could put together strips. Some of these are pretty short, so we may end up doing just kind of a short block here. But I'm thinking that I maybe want to intersperse it with something, and I think black and white might be a little much for, or yes, the black and white prints might be a little much for this pastel theme. So I'm thinking maybe gray, and just periodically have gray in here. I wish I had some gray stripe, gray and white stripe. I'm sure it's out there in the world somewhere. Or maybe a darker gray. Oops, that's a whole block. How'd that happen? Just to kind of see how this looks. I don't know, does that look springy or that's too much? This would be very subtle in between. It provides some, I guess, continuity across the pastels. It's light colored itself, but it repeats. And the repetition is nice. That's kind of, I don't know, that's a little blah, isn't it? I mean, I will try say a black and white stripe, but I really think that's going to be pretty overpowering. Where do my black and white stripes go? Or a subtle black and white print, maybe. I'm thinking that this big stripe is, wow. It would be a striking stripe, wouldn't it? I think it's just too much for that pastel a piece. What if we had some pretty subtle black on white somewhere? Something more like, grab this, that in between, wouldn't that be better? Or that could be what we do on the ends when we do the curve, cut the contrasting piece, the curve. It's a very different look to be using these light colors, but I have these scraps from, I don't know what, oh, I think it's one of my apple piecing quilts. Plus some I have from other projects from way back when. To see whether or not that pop of color is what I'm looking for. Or not. That's pretty blah, isn't it? It's pretty, but it's, I'm so used to brights, I guess. Maybe I want to use this pop of color as the repeated piece. Because I think I do want something, maybe a narrower, do I have a strip of this? Narrower black and white stripe. I'll just do a very subtle one. Periodic, oh, that's better, isn't it? That is better. Definitely better than the big old stripe, much as I love the big old stripe. It's just not right for here. And then we could do something like this as the contrast, or we have, that's maybe a little less subtle. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But I'm going to start putting some strips together, and it may be, I really do want to use the strips in this stash, so it may be a pretty short block. Whoops, but I will, oh, you know, I don't have to have all one color going across, so I could piece them and make the strips longer so that it really is a scrappy look. All right, we'll see what happens. I'm just going to cut some strips. They probably will not be parallel straight, although a lot of these look to be. I may throw a curve in there once in a while, just because I can. You don't really need to watch me do that sewing or selecting, so I will go off and do that. When I come back, hopefully I will have a block ready for the next step.
This is the point where my iPhone abandoned its sanity and took mine with it. It has reverted to its old habit of starting out fine with a clip, and then all of a sudden when it's recording, it switches to slow motion. I can recover it to a certain extent, and I have done that as much as I can, but the sound is going to be, I've set it as high as I can for those parts that got messed up, but it's going to be lower volume than the other parts, and I apologize for that. If you can't hear it, probably not going to lose a lot. And then there are a couple of points where I actually come in. There's just no way I could recover it. So I will just come in with some still shots and let you know what's happening. My apologies. My iPhone, I guess, apologizes. I hope you can bear with us, and thank you so much.
I tried several different things on this one piece, so it's a sampler exploration, I guess. I did a curve, another curve. This one I made myself. That was an intentional curve. This one I had a piece of this green that had a curve in it, and I also had a gold piece that was curved, and they almost matched, so I did cut them to fit. And it's a very tiny bit that peeks out, but I kind of like those little bits in quotes. I interspersed with these narrower stripes. I cut these at 3/4 inch, so they finish at 1/4 inch. I tried cutting a 1 inch that would finish at 1/2 inch, and I just didn't like it. I think it needed to be really pretty subtle as a black and white stripe can be. And now I need to trim this. I've got some, and I need to trim this. You can see I have some straight crooked pieces here, and I want this to end up being straight so that I have actual rectangle with parallel sides. I think this is possibly as wide as I'm going to make it. Let me see if let me make this a reasonably straight side to begin with, so I have something to gauge, and I will just use a black and white stripe as my guide. And now, if I cut this straight across, I lose a lot of the pink. So I'm thinking that as an option, this could end up being a curve. Do I want to leave it that way in case that's the way I want it in the end? And this end, I want to leave because when I do the curve, maybe I can save more of this by doing the curve that way.
These next few shots are just sampling different fabrics that I might use for that curved bit at the right-hand side. I abandoned these, went to a stripe, and then you'll see that I went back to one of them later.
Say we did something like that. Wouldn't even really have to be a curve, would it? That's not bad. What do you think? I'm going to cut the curve. Let me put this on top, actually. A better idea of what I can do here. And I want this to be either very much off perpendicular or pretty perpendicular. I'm going to go with pretty perpendicular, although it's going a different direction than that, which may be good, may not be. Well, we won't know till we try, right? Though, let me grab a piece that is bigger, and we can try it going the same direction. So do we want it to be like that? Oh, that's not right. That's what we already have. Do we want it to be like that? Or like that. Inquiring minds want to know. I'm thinking I'm more into that. Oops. I think this is more what I want to go for. So I hope I can find some more of this fabric at some point. Make sure I'm going the same direction here. And let me save that for a time when I really need a 45-degree angle. And we're going to do this. Right sides up in both cases. Since I have sort of squirrely seams and things here, I will, oops, this is the piece that's going to, so that will determine, okay. I'm okay now. I'm okay, I promise. All right, how do I want to do this curve? I want it to be reasonably subtle. I don't want to have to do a really steep curve. Got a couple of pieces for crumb block at some point. And then, big do I want it to be? I'll make it oversized. I can always cut it down, right? Right. Okay. So, and then I will want to, I'll give it plenty of extra just because I can. And pull out that piece. And there is our curved bit. It looks a little like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, doesn't it? Or I don't know, a water tower, or a striped vine coming off of something. Yeah, I kind of like it. I don't know exactly what to make of it, but I kind of like it. I'm almost thinking I want it to be more like that, though. So it is kind of crooked. Sorry. So we want to go. Could do it like that, or more like this. So this, and more like that. That's a little more fun, isn't it? So not parallel is how we're going to do it. I'm trying to not lose too much of that gold piece because I really like that. And here we go again. And again, I'm going to put this. No, I'm not, because I can see better this way how I want to go. Okay. This is probably going to be an imperfect curve, but such is life. Alrighty. That piece goes away. And it's got some pieces that might work for crumb quilt. All right, I'm going to sew this curve. We'll see what we've got in the end. This looks to me like too much, and it didn't get off kilter much, so I'm going to off kilter the block a little bit more. Take some of this off, and then trim this. I know this seems kind of goofy to work out how you want it off kilter when you're improvising, but here we are. To each her own, right? So, got that trimmed in a fashion, and I think I want something up here though. So, oh, maybe a gold circle coming out of that. It's not the same gold, but it gives you the idea. Sort of wrapping around that. Or I have a piece of this, could be coming from that. That doesn't do it. That just doesn't work for me. That's better, though. I think I would want it to be the same gold. Could even have like a layered effect where there's a little bit of black hanging out over that, or not. Maybe a little bit of white would be more appropriate. And that is that block, or nearly that block. Again, more options for what you could do with that concept. You could change fabrics completely. You could do a bunch of stripes with plain in between. You could do a plain fabric over here, as we sort of showed, if you wanted to do something more like that. I kind of like that, actually. Maybe I like that better than the stripe. So that could be a possibility. I don't know, what do you think? I'm going to leave this as is for the moment, and you can just let me know what you think. We could have a circle going off in the distance there. Let me know what you think. Do you like the stripe up there? Or do you like a solid fabric? It's a little bit brighter than some of them, but I've got, you know, a couple that are brighter, so I think having a brighter one is okay there. I think this is too much, and it's a print, which the other pastels aren't. So I think maybe, all in all, that one. What do you think? And have that growing out there. I don't know, I quite like that. So we've done 2 different blocks, but tried a lot of different things with it. And I hope it has sparked some ideas for you. That's why we do it here. This is not here, make this. It's, let's try this. And perhaps you will have found some pieces of things that you like, even if you didn't like the overall whole of. I trimmed this green piece into a shape that would give us a better idea of how it would look. And this circle I would change out to that same gold, but I think this is a better idea of how it looks, and I quite like it. We could trim that off, of course, either at an angle like that. Let me try that. Something like that anyway. Or you do it straight. I kind of like that. I didn't think I was going to, but I think I kind of do. I might like that straight. Now this is looking a little bit like a jellyfish, so one of the other things I was going to suggest, let me see if I can find that piece, would be to piece something without this in between, and then have a bias strip that you take across as you have seen me do many times, which I think would be kind of fun too. It's a little hard to see when, and then you could have a little jellyfish sort of effect. That's an idea. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. It is always good to see you and hear from you in the comments. I appreciate all of you very much. I will see you next week. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.